And I think this is where it becomes a little bit frustrating for people because they're like, oh, but why is it not listening to my prompt? The reality is it's listening to exactly what the prompt is. The difference is you don't know how to use a specific language in order to get it to create the image that you want.
Welcome to the Agents of Change, the podcast experience you've been waiting for your entire marketing career. Search, social, mobile, AI, blockchain, and neuromarketing. These are the Agents of Change, and so are you. Digital marketing success awaits, and your transformation begins now.
Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Change podcast, the podcast that helps you reach and engage more of your ideal customers online. My name is Rich Brooks. I'm your host as always, and this is episode 621, powered by Flight New Media. Why does all AI-generated imagery look the same, and why does it all look like slop? Well, the good news is it doesn't all look like slop, but the slop is pretty easy to spot. The other good news? You can create better images in AI, stuff that won't get tagged to slop, but it will take some better prompting, some additional iteration, and a better vocabulary to get there. That's what we're going to be discussing on today's podcast. Earlier today, I put on a presentation for a local chamber on how to build your first AI assistant, like custom GPTs or Claude projects. I've noticed that every time I do this presentation, it evolves as how I use AI evolves. One of the things I've noticed is that a critical piece to creating AI assistants is having robust, detailed, well-structured prompts and instructions for that assistant. Unfortunately, creating those instructions is tedious work. Same thing with prompts. If you're using a framework like Richie or Clear, a robust prompt can be a page or two long and instructions can be even longer. As time has evolved, I've started relying more and more on AI to create the structure for these AI prompts and instructions. The way I do it and the way I recommend you do it is very simple. Start by opening up a chat window in your favorite AI platform and tell the AI that you're looking to create a structured prompt that accomplishes whatever it is you're setting out to do, like writing a blog post about growing hot peppers, say. Then tell the AI that you want to use a popular framework like Richie or Clear and to rewrite your prompt using that format. It may ask you a few questions about things like your audience and tone and constraints. Once it has the necessary information, it will output the nearly perfect prompt or set of instructions that you can drop into a new chat window and have the AI get to work. Your output is going to be significantly more on point, and the same goes for creating instructions in your AI assistant. Hey, listen, give it a try and let me know if that works for you. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how we can generate better imagery and leave the slop behind. My next guest is a leading AI content creator, animator, and educator who bridges creativity and technology. Starting as a web developer in advertising, he transitioned to origami, art, and animation, building a strong following on Instagram. His fascination with technology led him to embrace generative AI tools like Midjourney and ChatGPT, mastering their potential for creative innovation. As co-founder of Zen Robot, he develops workshops that train marketers, agencies, and creatives to leverage AI for tasks like social media content, brand campaigns, and storyboarding. His sessions demystify AI, empowering professionals to enhance their creativity and productivity. He equips brands and agencies with the tools to thrive in a rapidly evolving digital landscape. Today, we're going to look at how you can get better outputs from AI-generated imagery with Ross Symons. Ross, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rich.
So how did you get started working with AI-generated imagery, and what led you to focus on this space?
Yeah, so I come from advertising. I'm a trained web developer, so building apps and websites, and just quickly found out that working for somebody was not really going to be my jam for the foreseeable future. Fortunately, worked that out quite early on. I say early on, I'm 44 now, and I worked it out probably around my 30s. I was just like, I need to find a way to just exit from the system. I had no idea what I was going to do. Quit my job at Ogilvy. I had freelance work coming in, And the idea was just to go and try and do something by myself as a freelancer. And at the time, I had started an Instagram project where I was folding a different origami figure every day. For the longest time, I'd wanted to do a 365-day project. There were quite a lot of those. This was 2014, so Instagram was just on its up. I wasn't really much of a social media person, but I wanted a collection of all the stuff that I'd created over time, over a year. So by the end of that year, after just posting regularly, I started making stop motion animations with origami. I started getting approached by brands because it was just before the whole influencer sort of wave hit as well. So brands would see opportunities with creatives like myself to make content for them, post it on their account, my account. My account at that stage was probably around, 100,000 followers, which was quite big for Instagram at that time. And I did that for 10 years. I did that for the most part of 10 years. But what I never really let go of was my attempt to try and merge technology with creativity. And I learned how to do motion graphics. And this was all by myself. I didn't really have a team. And in 2020, when was that? 2022, when Midjourney, that was the first application, first AI tool I ever used. When I was able to make an image using text, blew my mind. I really just coming from having a computer in front of me for as long as I had and knowing what was possible with a machine like that. And then seeing what this technology was able to allow you to do, just really just shifted something inside me. And I just really went kind of headfirst into it, trying to understand it, try to just see if there was a way to build apps and just anything I could try and get my hands on in terms of some of this tech. Midjourney was the best at that stage, and there were a few other tools that came out. Later that year, ChatGPT arrived. That was November of 2022. Same thing, large language model, and I just tried to do as much as I could with it. And what I was doing, I assumed most people were doing, which was pretty much like AI is the future. This is obviously going to be the future of a lot of creative work. So I just thought everyone was doing that. And about 6 or 7 months in, I was telling people, asking them about have they tried this Midjourney, and again, just assuming that they obviously they had. And it was like I was talking to them about this foreign whatever, this entity that didn't exist. They're like, he speaks about this AI thing. Like, what is it? So I realized at that time that I was, maybe not ahead, but I was just looking into things that a lot of other people weren't. I got invited to do a stop motion animation pitch at an agency. And at the end of the pitch didn't go that well. They were like, cool, don't call us kind of thing. I remember the guy, it was just one guy that I was sitting with. I said, are you guys using AI in your production sort of pipeline at all? This was probably around halfway through 2023. And he said, no, not really. So I showed him a couple of things. I said, do you mind if I just show you a couple of the things I'd made and a few tools? And his eyes, like at the end of that, were like, dude, you need to come back. You need to come show the rest of the team all of this stuff. So they're like, what would you charge for a little workshop or whatever? I was like, cool, they're going to pay for this. It's amazing. So I went back to the team. It was about, I think, a room of about 10 or 15 people. And just, I showed them what I knew. I mean, there was no structure. There was no sort of curriculum or anything. I was just showing them some of the things that I'd made and some of the tools that are available and what you can do with them. And at the end of that, I realized, I'm like, you know what, if I tell enough people about this, I should actually be able to, just kick something off that might happen. And that was the beginning of what just ended up me, doing a lot of these workshops. I was getting flown around the country and here in South Africa to do these seminars and workshops, which were just really inspirational sessions and guiding creative teams on this is the landscape, this is the difference between a large language model and a diffusion model. This is how you use them together. This is how you make images and video. My ex-boss, when I was working in advertising, him and I just kept in touch. And he approached me and said, look, he's got a few clients that might be interested in this whole AI thing. And your discovery session or your little inspiration session might be worth exploring if you don't mind me introducing you to some of them. So I thought, cool, let's do that. And at the end of that, he said, look, there's something here. We're ahead. You clearly have an understanding of it. I was growing a bit of a following on LinkedIn. And he just said, let's just formalize this. So Zen Robot was born. That was at the end of 2024. And essentially we have two pillars to the business now, which is content production we're using generative AI in the form of animation and video, anything you really need, banner ads, that sort of thing, as well as the training. And the training, we have a few products. We have a masterclass, a bootcamp, and the Gen AI Academy. And that keeps us pretty busy with the growing community. The Gen AI Academy is just something that we've launched at the beginning of this year. So yeah.
Sounds like you've got your hands full. Before we jump into some of the AI stuff, just a quick question. Origami, was that something that you had always done? Or is that just something where you're like, I need something to do for 365 days. Origami seems interesting.
Yeah, almost exactly that. I think I could only fold the crane, which is like the standard little bird that most people that have dabbled in origami could do. And I saw there were a lot of other models and there was a lot of books and sort of tutorials that I could find on YouTube and wherever I could find them. I was just obsessed. But I think it was my creative nature just really clawing its way out of the corporate world. It was just, I didn't think, okay, I'm going to start this project and finish it, and by the end of the year grow a following. I mean, there was nothing like that on my radar at all. But I saw the opportunity and I realized, okay, well, no one else is doing this, so let's just do that. And I think, subsequently, what I learned in terms of content production, putting content out regularly on social media, commenting, getting a community or getting involved with the community, definitely aided me in what I'm doing now, which is, again, I did the same thing. I on LinkedIn, which was connected with people, found people that were doing similar work to me, posted regularly, found a kind of niche in the teaching space. And now very fortunate enough to be teaching creatives all over the world how to use AI.
Nice. So when people hear AI generated images, they often think about tools like you mentioned, Midjourney or DALL-E. How do you define what the space is really like for creatives today?
Look, I think that Midjourney just was the best from the beginning. There were other tools that were a little bit more technical. There was something called stable diffusion, which was a very technical interface, but it was able to produce like really good results. But Midjourney, for whatever reason, just although you were using it through Discord, I mean, this was like right at the beginning, you had to use like special commands like /imagine or /blend. So it was quite techy. It was quite, not to say that you had to be technical to use it, but I think it just made sense for people that were slightly more technical and using digital interfaces for them to engage with these tools. So Midjourney, DALL-E, when DALL-E came out, it was kind of like that is ChatGPT's first image generation, I guess, tool. It wasn't great. It was, and I think that a lot of people just thought, well, that's the extent to which you could use a diffusion model, which is what an image generation model is called. And how it's changed kind of going forward is just there hasn't been like this massive eruption of these tools. And I think purely because they are not, you have to train the models and the best of the models are already out there. So for you to catch up to that, like would require like a lot of firstly training material, which I don't want to get into that sort of realm because there's a lot of debate as to how these models have been trained and where they get the content from, which is understandable. But if you're starting out now and creating an image model, I think you will be left in the dirt. Like really, there's no ways you're going to catch up to what's happening now. But for the most part, Midjourney is still one of the best. Nano Banana being Gemini's or Google Gemini's image model that is phenomenal. I think the big difference there is it's almost a combination of a large language model as well as a diffusion model blended into one. So you can generate an image, but then you can edit the image using text. So if you take a snapshot of me sitting over here and you say, place a cowboy hat on top of his head without having to use software like Photoshop or Canva, you can place a hat on my head with it in a still shot, which again, it's not the type of technology that we had 2 years ago. And now it's really just dominating and very, very powerful.
So you use the phrase diffusion model, comparing it to kind of an LLM. What is a diffusion model exactly?
That's a good question. A diffusion model is
perhaps the layman's definition of a diffusion model. Then.
A diffusion model is basically it is an application or a program or an AI application that allows you to type text into a prompt box or just a little input box. And whatever your prompt whatever you've written in the prompt, it will then generate an image as close as possible to what the prompt is. So if you type a man walking on a beach, it then uses a process called diffusion. The diffusion process is basically, it just takes the image and it blasts a whole bunch of noise at it. So if you've ever used Photoshop and you take the grain or the noise, there's a noise generator. So if you crank that all the way up, exactly how the technology works, I will not be able to tell you, but it basically just reverses that process. So it blasts noise. In the reversing of it's trying to reverse back to what the prompt is. So it blasts at this, starts with what is called a seed. That seed that then generates this massive block of noise. And then slowly but surely, it's got these two little kind of, think of it as a creative director and a painter, or creative director and a junior artist. They're having a conversation based on what the prompt is, which is essentially the brief. And they're like, how close are we getting to this image? So brief comes in, man walking on a beach, and these two start talking to each other, looking at the image. Are we close? Are we further away? Close, further away? How do we guide it? And it's I'm kind of butchering what very amazing, smart people have done to eventually create what, in my opinion, is magic. Like how this has been worked out is just absolutely crazy to me.
Ross, you emphasize teaching fundamentals over tools, even though we have been talking about tools. Why is that distinction important when it comes to AI-generated visuals?
I think that, just there is a fundamental understanding that you have to have between the difference between a large language model and a diffusion model. Now, those sound like they're two very new terms which didn't exist sort of 5 years ago. But I think understanding that the difference between the two, and also that there is a different way of engaging with the two. Maybe not engaging, but there's a different way of giving instructions to the two. So, for example, a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini, you'll jump on and start speaking to it with very natural language. You'll say to it, hey, Gem, or hey, Chat, whatever, whether you call it anything, or you speak to it in very clear English or whatever your native tongue is. So you'll tell it to perform something and you'll write down all your thoughts and then hit the go button and it'll respond with something that looks like a script or a response. With the diffusion model, the difference is you're not having a conversation with it. Every prompt that you send it, that conversation, basically that prompt that goes in, and when it develops the image, what comes out is a closed off session. You don't then start a conversation with particularly in Midjourney's case. So when you say a man walking on a beach and you hit run, it develops 4 images. But those 4 images that come out, outside of you downloading the image or editing the image in a different application, you don't have much control over what that image looks like going past that. So it's a closed off conversation. And I think that is what a lot of people struggle with. And I know this because every time I train people, I see that they say to Midjourney, for example, or whichever image tool they're using, that please change the color of the person's shirt to X. What they don't understand, and I think it's normal for them to do this because they've been using ChatGPT is probably the first AI tool that most people use, or a large language model. So now jumping into the diffusion model space, you're actually directing using tokens or I guess key phrases instead of using natural language to explain what it is you want on the screen. So when you say man walking on the beach, comma, sunset, comma, 4K, comma, moody, for example, that is not how you speak to a human. That's not how you type anything via email or Telegram to anybody. But that is how you get the best results when working with a diffusion model. And I think that's just one of the fundamentals that I think people struggle with. But once they click, okay, cool. So I'm engaging slightly differently with this entity compared to a large language model.
So you touched on one of the key fundamentals right there. I'm wondering, what are some of the other key fundamentals we need to understand before we can start getting some real value from these AI image tools? Because we've all seen AI images that we can't tell from reality. And we've all seen ones that get labeled as AI slop that as soon as we see them, we know that they were generated by AI.
Yeah, so I think that it comes with practice. It's really knowing the limitations of the tools. So for example, like Midjourney is not amazing at putting text into an image, but Nano Banana is excellent at doing that. So that is one of many examples of just knowing which tool to use. Also, the prompt structure, I think, is quite important. I'll be honest that most of the tools, as they've matured, you can type a very simple prompt. You can say a portrait of a woman or a a detailed photograph of a woman standing in a coffee shop. And you will not be able to tell, well, the average person would not be able to tell whether that is a photograph or it is a generated image. And that is just, I think, what would naturally have happened with all of these tools. They would have got better to the point of trying to achieve as much realism as possible. But if I wanted something that was illustrative, I would then add that into the prompt. Instead of saying high quality photo, I would say illustration or retro style illustration using specific colors to develop that image. So I think that those sort of nuances and knowing what sort of commands to use with practice, and obviously also knowing the interface, because they are very standard, basic sort of user interfaces, but knowing what certain buttons do and what parameters do, it just comes down to practice, really. But I think that most people, at the moment, like you can make an image in ChatGPT, you can make one in Gemini and Midjourney. All of them are going to come out really good. But where the trick comes in, where it becomes very difficult, is someone says, cool, we love this image. Can you take that character you've just created and now put them into a different scenario? Can you change their shirt? Can you change the sunglasses that they're wearing? Can you put them into a car? And moving from that to the sort of storyboarding phase, if you want to call it that, I think that is where it becomes abundantly clear that people don't know that next sort of step and how to approach that. And that's just one of the things that we tackle as teachers.
So would you say that some of the problems or some of the challenges that the average user has right now is the fact that they're treating these diffusion models like LLMs, and obviously the models seem to be advancing, so maybe that won't be a problem in the future. It's not so much a problem with Nano Banana, but it's about understanding the types of commands that these diffusion models, these AI image generators need. Is that going to help us get to that next level?
It's possible. I think that how intuitive the tools become is definitely the next. Well, I think it's probably been like that from the beginning, but they will become easier to use. I'm not saying it will happen, but my guess is that you're going to get a lot of the content that looks quite the same. And a small example is I saw somebody recently posted something about how Nano Banana uses the same face if you don't physically describe what the face needs to be like. So it's a generic face, and he pointed out, look at what the eyes look like. And this was him creating images over a course of a week with different prompts, but keeping a man's face, for example, which is quite a generic prompt, as opposed to describing the man has a long gray beard he's in his 50s, has wrinkles on his forehead and has a receding hairline, or whatever the case is. Like, those are the details that I don't think people know to add in order to get a different style of image. But going forward, that is going to be left for those who are, I guess, willing and curious enough to want to try and know how to create better imagery. But for the most part, I think there is going to be a generic kind of standard AI look that maybe on close inspection you'll be able to see. But the tools will get better, and everyone, I think a lot of these platforms and a lot of the creators are selling this whole dream of, it only took me 2 seconds to make this entire storyboard and took me 30 minutes to make a Hollywood movie. And there's just hype, because I don't think that it did. And you could do this with one prompt. Maybe you could, but if you really, if you kind of pay a lot of attention to the quality of the content that's come out, it's not amazing. But the amazing and very good quality content that is coming out is people that understand a little bit about film, maybe not a little bit, but quite a bit about film, about photography, about maybe animation, technical understanding of lighting, environment, set design. Maybe some fashion people know what looks good and how a garment looks on someone. Being able to describe that is the skill. And I think that is something that allows people that have got a deep understanding of a specific field of expertise, for example, like graphic design or fashion or architecture. They know what makes good fashion, architecture, and graphic design. But the average person would just type in, create me a poster or make me a cool dress that has blue sequins on it. That I think that's the fundamental difference between what is going to be good quality content and bad.
And that's a really interesting point, Ross, because I've seen this across a number of different disciplines where anybody with very little skills can create something that is okay using AI. but it's the people who have years of experience or a specific perspective on whatever it is that they're good at can suddenly use AI to levels that no one else is touching. And so I think that that's one of the things you're talking about. The people who are going to get the most out of it, at least right now, have a background in visuals, in design, and know how to say something that is very specific rather than man walking down a beach.
Exactly. No, you're totally right. And what's interesting about most of the people that we have taught is the people that have been in industry for, let's say, 10 years plus. And it doesn't matter what industry. Let's just use creative visual industry. So anyone in film, animation, graphic design, art direction, those are the people that once they see what is possible with the tools, they realize something's on in them and they're like, I know all of what I need to know in order to make a good piece of graphic design or a good piece of fashion video, whatever the case is. And you're exactly right. It comes down to taste. And if you've got bad taste, whether you're creating with AI or without AI, your taste is still going to be bad. So yeah. I think it's about knowing what it is you know and using AI to enhance that and just speed things up a little bit.
Now, you've talked about the difference between describing what you want versus describing what something looks like. Can you walk us through that shift? Because I think that's really valuable for people who maybe don't have as much experience with the visuals as you are, but trying to get better images out of these tools.
Yes, absolutely. So I think that describing what it is you want is like the subject. So a man walking on a beach, you are going to it will return 4 images of a man walking on a beach. The beach is going to be very generic. So is the man, so is what he's wearing. But the more you're able to describe to the model what it is you want to see in different areas of the image itself. So if you say a perfectly symmetrical shot of a man with a blue shirt wearing a cowboy hat and red socks, the more detail you go into it, the closer you're going to get to the image, to what it is in your head that you actually want. And I think this is where it becomes a little bit frustrating for people because they're like, but why is it not listening to my prompt? The reality is it's listening to exactly what the prompt is. The difference is you don't know how to use a specific language in order to get it to create the image that you want. And this is where I think a lot of people don't really think about it until they are shown. But how you don't need to know all of those details because you can use a large language model which has an infinite amount of knowledge about every field of expertise that has ever been out there. So if you tell it to, okay, you're a creative director with 25 years experience in photography, write me a Mid-Journey prompt that creates an image that looks like X, and you explain it in your basic English or your basic language, it will return a prompt in a exactly the right format that Mid-Journey will then be able to produce something. So that is how you take what it is you are asking it to produce to what it is you kind of see in your head by using multiple tools.
That's interesting. So that's almost like, okay, I don't have any experience in the design world, but I can hire somebody for a specific project, bring them in and all their expertise, and using the LLM as an intermediary step, I'm not going to have as much skill as perhaps you would because of all your years of experience, but I am tapping into the LLM's language model so that it can give me the words to describe to Midjourney or Nano or whatever my tool would be. And I'm going to get better results that way by having that interim step of the LLM creating a richer, more detailed prompt that I would be able to generate on my own. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
Exactly that. Someone pointed out to me the other day that it was just an analogy. They said with a large language model, you now have 1,000 interns at your disposal. And yeah, I love that phrase because that's exactly, to your point, exactly what it is. You now have someone who can research. I mean, I say intern. I mean, interns are not paid a lot of money and still take a lot longer to do the work, and the work's not great. It's almost like you have a super intern that is way smarter than you, way faster than you, and can just produce at a scale and nonstop for 24 hours a day. But if you know how to ask that intern the right questions, and this comes back to just being human, right? Like, I mean, you can have a creative director who is okay at their job. If they don't know how to explain to the intern or the sort of mid or beginner level staff member that this is what they want to see, this person is going to go away and come back and show them something. And they're like, yeah, but you're not listening to what I'm saying. And the reality is, it's maybe you don't know how to explain what you want. And I think that is exactly where it is. And not to say that copywriters or someone who's an author or reads more is going to be better at this. On the contrary, actually, because it's just people who are able to break down what it is that they want to see on the screen in a format that the diffusion model or large language model in Nana Banana's case is able to translate into an image that best suits the prompt itself.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Although, as you're talking, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but it feels like a lot of these tools like Midjourney and Nano Banana, and I'm sure the others, I could upload an image, whether I created the image, somebody else created the image, and say, like, this is the style I want, or this is what I want the character to look like. Is that a shortcut to some of the experience we're talking about? Or do you still feel that even with these kind of new built-in, some of them are new built-in tools, do you feel like that's a way that we can skip over the step? Or do you feel that the expertise is still a critical component in terms of getting the results you're looking for?
I think the expertise comes down to how well you're able to use a large language model to reverse engineer. Yeah, I haven't said this a lot, but I think AI is its main function or its main strength is reverse engineering. So I know a little bit about music, a little bit about art, a little bit about film, but not enough to go and in any of those disciplines become a very good artist. And what I do know though is I can take a piece of art or a piece of music, I can give it to a large language model and I can say, break down what makes this a good song, what makes this a good design, what makes this a good painting, and break it down into tokens or phrases that a diffusion model would be able to replicate that style. That way, I mean, this is essentially exactly how every artist, be it a musician or even an actor, has, like, they've watched people that have done things before them. That is their training data. They've then taken that training data, maybe not in the same mechanical or computer-driven way that an AI tool would do, but taking all that data in, analyzing it, and over time, learning and crafting, but essentially copying what a certain person that they or an artist that they admired and enjoyed their work, they try to emulate that in some way with just hiding a little. I mean, there's that book like an artist, which is, you've got to know how to hide your sources. And if you look at anyone's work, this is even before AI, you can see where people have taken certain things from other people. I've heard Eric Clapton say on numerous occasions, he stole this from this person. Dave Grohl, thing is like, got this riff from that person. And I think now with AI, it's just really speeding that process up. So I think understanding that if you know how to reverse engineer something, and you can do that by dropping it into, it's not as simple as just dropping it in, please reverse engineer what makes this a great thing. It's iterative. It takes time because the model can easily break down what the physical, so if you take an image of Salvador Dali, you drop it in, you say, please describe what this image looks like and give me a style without using the artist's name. Okay.
Right.
It's going to say surrealist painting something, and it's going to, I seriously lack the vocabulary to fully describe what might be in that prompt, but it'll break it down for you in a way that you would never be able to do. Maybe you would over time, but now you've got a base in a text format, which is very important because text is what the large language model and diffusion model understands. You have this base style written out in very clear, descriptive language that you can now use as your base to start developing more images. And then what happens is you take that style and you say, a man walking on a beach in this specific style, you drop that whole style in there, and then you make an image and you're like, okay, is that further away or closer to what it is I had in my head? Is it very Salvador Dali or is it kind of straying a little bit? And this is where the taste and creative direction comes in because you are still the person, you're still the entity asking the LLM or asking one of your 1,000 interns, what can I do to change this or make it a little bit more X? Make it a little bit less surrealistic. Make it slightly more bold. Change the colors to this. And then it will, this is me now hypothetically speaking to a large language model, saying, cool, do these things to the prompt so that when I put it back into the diffusion model, Midjourney or this, also what I'm speaking about here happens all inside Nano Banana by itself. You don't have to leave Nano Banana or leave Gemini to work within Nano Banana, which makes it a very powerful technology. But essentially, that is the process, and that is where it becomes iterative. For you to take one piece of art off the internet, you just have one image, drop it into a large language model, and tell it, please make me 10 images that are kind of in the style of this. There's not enough creative direction there. It'll create something, but then you have to tell it, okay, that's not quite what I was looking for. Go in this direction, change this, make the colors less that. And this is where your understanding of that field is very important.
So I want to bring up a couple of points in your last comment that really struck me. One is the whole idea of reverse engineering, and I completely agree with you on this. And one of the things I really liked about Midjourney when it was in Discord was that you could see what other people were using for prompts. And whether you're reverse engineering an image or you're looking at other people's prompts, it starts to give you the language that you may be lacking in how to describe an image accurately to, like you said, get the image that's in your head kind of out onto the screen. So that's just a great learning opportunity right there. And the other thing you mentioned and said again at the end is iteration. Like, this is not a one shot and you're done sort of thing, is that the professionals may need to go back multiple times to really hone in what that character or what the scene is going to look like. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is about iteration. And I think that it's for that reason that there's a lot of negativity around AI at the moment. And yeah, I mean, whether it stays and how long it's going to stay for is all up for debate. But I think that what happens is people that are willing to iterate, people that are willing to sit with the problem and be curious and try and use the tool to get, it's like, I didn't get it on the first go, I didn't get it on the second go, my credit's running out, but I'm going to buy more and I'm going to work at it until I get the thing right. When they produce something that they know, okay, cool, I was able to produce this, whatever, image or video. And then they have the guts, let's call it that, to put it out on social media. That is what you're seeing as the final piece. Someone else sees it. They're like, oh, they used AI to do it. They try it. They try once. There's no iteration. There's no understanding of what the tools do. There's no understanding of prompt structure or the difference between a large language model and a diffusion model. It produces something. They're like, this is not great. And then that's where it ends. And then that becomes a lot easier for people to hate on the technology because they aren't able to use it in the way that someone who's willing and curious enough to sit with it and also pay the price, which is a lot of the time it comes down to credits, not thousands of dollars, but it's money. It costs money and time. And that, I think, that is what separates, that's what's causing this massive divide at the moment. That's just the nature of a new tool, right? Like, it looks like it's easy to use. You try to use it, you can't. Are you going to learn how to use it, or are you just going to decide that it's not for you and either hate on it or just let it be?
Ross, I want to wrap up with, what is one truth that's being floated around about AI image generation that you feel is just complete bunk?
Oh, that is easy.
Fair enough.
I think, everyone thinks that, but it's so easy to do X. If it was so easy, everyone would be doing it. And the reality is the AI slop sort of hashtag or just AI slop vibe that's going around at the moment is a result of people being excited about the technology, using it, and not iterating over it. They are sending out the first image or video that gets produced. And I don't want to knock anyone doing that, because I think it's important that we go through this phase of exploration and we go through this phase of creating. And yes, there is going to be a lot of content that comes out, but you need to just consider that if you've never done something like this before, chances are, the quality of the content that you're putting out is not going to be good. And you need to just be kind of humble and look at it and go, okay, well, maybe you can't see the difference. And maybe you're just like, well, I'm okay with what this looks like. But I do believe that if you just keep at it and also try and understand that, yes, it's easy to write a prompt, but it's not easy to generate an image that is compelling, because it's not just one prompt. It might be multiple prompts with image references and reverse engineering styles and environments. And that's what it takes. So I think, the fact that people are saying that AI is easy, I think is very incorrect.
All right. Ross, this has been great. If people want to learn more about you, or they're interested in any of your classes or courses, where can we send them online?
Yeah, so zenrobot.ai, that is our web address. That should link you to some of the programs that we have. We have a masterclass, a bootcamp, which is an in-person training seminar, and as well as our Gen AI Academy, which is on school.com. But reaching out to me directly on LinkedIn, I think, is also a safe option. I'm Ross Symons, Symons, and my email address. Do you mind if I leave my email address? Is that okay?
If it's okay with you, it's okay with us.
Yeah. Yeah, ross@zenrobot.ai. That's where you can contact me.
Awesome. And we'll have all those links in the show notes. Ross, this has been really helpful. Thank you so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, Rich.
Lots of great advice from Ross. Lots of things I'm sure you're going to want to try out for yourself, but maybe you don't remember all of them. Don't worry, we've got you covered. Just head on over to theagentsofchange.com/621. There you'll find the audio so you can listen to it again, or a full transcript of the show, or the blog post about everything that I learned from Ross, along with all the links he shared in case you're interested in taking one of those courses that he puts on through ZenRobot. Everyone's rushing to figure out how to use AI faster, with less friction and fewer steps. But the people who are winning right now are the ones who are slowing down, learning the fundamentals, iterating with intention. The real competitive advantage isn't the tool, it's you, the agent of change.
Don't miss another thrilling episode of the Agents of Change podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform.